good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you're calling us from. My name is Daniel Valdez. I use he, him pronouns. I am the Chief External Affairs Officer at Welcoming America. I'm based in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm really excited to be here today to be moderating this conversation to talk about our end of year efforts. We have some great folks here today to share some of their knowledge and expertise, and just looking forward to getting into that here in a little bit. Before that, I'm going to share a little bit about Welcoming America for those of you who aren't familiar, as well as share some housekeeping rules. Welcoming America is an organization that works with local communities to help create more inclusive communities, really support newcomers, immigrant and refugees in particular. And we run a network of over 300 members, including nonprofit organizations and municipal governments. And for those of you who want to know more about Welcoming America, we'll have some slides at the end to share. But I think that a lot of you are already familiar with our work, and looking forward to sharing some of that as we go into this webinar. The chat features is available, so please use the chat feature for any technical questions that you may have. If you're having trouble hearing us or anything like that, let us know. Also, we do have a Q&A feature, so you to enter any questions. So as we're going through the conversation, if things come up, please put those questions in the Q&A feature. We will be monitoring that. We will have an opportunity to take a break from the questions that we've prepared for the panelists, and to dig into those questions. So please make sure that you add those questions as they come to you, and we'll make sure to incorporate them into our conversation today. This webinar is being recorded and will be shared, so you'll be able to get a copy of this webinar, and folks who were not able to attend will also be able to see it, and we'll make this available for folks too. We can go on to the next slide. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and kick us off into this conversation. We really wanted to make this topic in particularly a conversation, so that we can have the flexibility to really answer people's questions here. I think this is our first time doing a webinar in particular to this topic. And so we're excited to see folks who have joined us and who I'm sure are already thinking, if not, have already started some work around end of year. This is about really thinking about your end of year campaign, and to hear from some of these folks. So today we have Gurinder Kaur with the Immigrant Welcome Center. She's the CEO there. We also have Shada Sells with Act Blue, who is the Associate of Movement Issues and Charitable Organizations, as well as Amy Campbell, Development Director at Corners Outreach. I'm going to give the opportunity. These folks have amazing bios and have done a lot of great work, but I want to give them the opportunity to share a little bit more about themselves and about why organizations should be thinking about end of year giving, and why it's important for organizations to start thinking about end of year giving. So we'll get us going into this conversation. And again, please put your questions in the Q&A function there, and we'll make sure to get to those as well. So yeah, let's get us started. Amy, let's start with you first.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Campbell. I'm the Development Director at Corners Outreach, which is a nonprofit in the Atlanta area. We work with different community members who, through education and economic opportunities. When I began in 2018, we were quite small, and we are now running about a $5 million budget. So through the 5 years there, I've been able to raise about $15 million through various endeavors, including a big capital campaign, which was recently successful. And when I think about year-end giving, it's really important to think about how you're engaging your donors throughout the year. But I think a lot of people when it comes to the end of the year, they're thinking about that gift, they're thinking about what they want to do. And so it is really important to kind of be out in front of it and thinking about how you're going to approach and really engage your donors in having conversations with you in the work. You don't just want their gift, you want their voice, you want their passions, you want their enthusiasm. So in addition to the end of year gift, I'm also thinking about what do people want to think about for the new year and how do we engage them when it comes to the end of the year. We're thinking about gifts, and then we immediately kind of transition into resolutions and what we want to change. And so I kind of like to combine those two efforts in my end of year giving, having some questions and feedback, but also thinking about how to cultivate or encourage different gifts.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Lots of things there that I wrote down that we'll get back into in just a minute. But Gurinder, I'd like for you to introduce yourself now.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be asked to be a part of this panel. And I've been serving as the CEO of the Immigrant Welcome Center. We are a nonprofit in Indianapolis, Indiana. The nonprofit has existed for more than 16 years now. I'm the first CEO who's a woman of color and an immigrant. So really exciting to be leading the organization towards a tremendous growth. During my tenure, we have grown from a staff of 4 and a budget of $350K to a staff of almost 12 and a budget of $3 million. And we couldn't have done this without the support of our individual donors who really year after year find the value in the work that we're doing in central Indiana and helping all immigrants find access to the resources that they need. And just as my colleague said, end of the year is probably one of the biggest campaigns that the majority of the nonprofits organize. And there's a lot of thinking that goes, a lot of passion about which story is going to connect the most with the donors. And I'm excited to dig into that a little bit more as we get into the question and answer session.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And congratulations on that growth. That's great. Impressive. Shada.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And thank you so much to everybody for showing up today. Thank you to Ali and the entire Welcoming America team. I am so honored to be around such amazing organizers and on this call today to talk about end of year and organizing generally. My name is Shada. I use she, her pronouns. I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts. And forgive me, my voice is dying today. I actually just got out of our all team retreat we've been having for the last week. So I'm feeling super energized and super excited to bring that to us all today. But my voice is suffering due to this. I work at Act Blue. We are a nonprofit organization, and our goal is to make technology and online fundraising as easy and accessible for organizations that are doing fantastic work on the ground, like all of you, to be able to raise money online and making it as easy as possible to do so. So we've developed a really awesome technology, and I'm excited to talk about some strategies, tactics, and how to really optimize on this new digital space that we're all living in, especially as we head into 2024 and an exciting end of year. So thank you again for this opportunity. I'm really looking forward to it.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you all for being here. And yes, I think we have a number of questions. And again, some of you, when you registered, sent us some questions. So we'll be looking at those as well. But again, if there's anything in the conversation that resonates with you, feel free to use the chat to ask questions on the Q&A. We really want folks to be active in this conversation, and we want it to be as interactive as possible. So lots like I said earlier on, Amy, there's a lot of things here that I wrote down from all of the folks that had the remarks, and development is fundraising and development in general. It's a very big field, and there's lots of we can spend hours and hours just on one aspect of it. So today we're really focusing on end of year giving, but you all are very familiar with fundraising in general, and I'm just excited to have you all here today. So I think I want to start off with this question too. In particular, I think this will set the tone for this conversation, because a lot of the folks, as you saw in the chat, are folks working in the immigrant welcoming space. And Gurinder, you mentioned that you were the first CEO of women of color in this organization, and just the growth that you've done as well. And Amy, you talked about your growth as well. And all of you, of course, work in that space too, around immigrant inclusion. So I'd love to just hear from you all. How can end of year campaigns be thinking about issues, particularly for folks who are thinking about immigrant inclusion, and in this sort of context that we have in this country going on today, politically in particular, either think about issues or communities from a cultural responsiveness perspective, or making sure that that lens of immigrant inclusion is part of these end of year campaigns. And I'd just love to hear from you all. How do you make sure that is something that you all incorporate into your campaigns or into your development more broadly? Because a lot of times I think we all know that there are formulas a lot of times to fundraising and to development, but it's really about how do you get to the communities, and in particular communities that you are serving a lot of times aren't seen as communities that can give back. And so I'd just love to hear your thoughts, and I'll open it up to anyone. So I don't know who wants to be the first brave soul to tackle this question. No one wants to go.
I can jump in. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a big part of it is elevating voices and really trying to help the donor feel like it's not just about the resource that they have, the money that they have, but it's actually about them and who they are, and how we want to elevate the voices of our community and really listen well. So I think the narrative comes into play, but also it's like an individual approach, right? And in fundraising and in end of year conversations, it does matter like who you are. So we're coming to it and we're listening, we're asking questions. We have kind of that listening mindset versus telling you about our community. It's like, this is our community. How are we working with this together?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's important for us to, talk not only about the organization, but the impact that the clients have been able to achieve with the support of the donors. So sometimes shining a light on, for example, a donation helps an individual get access to 10 minutes of a language line, so that there is that language equity. How do you tie your services to how they are helping the clients who are coming to your office or reaching to you various means, just tying that and making it tailored to your organization, as well as what the donors are really interested in hearing about.
I absolutely love both of those points. I think building those horizontal relationships and feeling like we're in community with the folks that we're asking for money from. We're not just up here holier than thou as an organization talking down, but really working across, I think is so fantastic and can be challenging to do digitally. But when we do, I think it helps build that sense of community. For me, when I think about this question, I think I get this question a lot in terms of, especially from like communities of color, organizers of color, or coming from like an immigrant background, which are the types of groups that I typically work with, about hesitation around asking for money and hesitation around, I mean, it can feel uncomfortable, and we have a lot of internal feelings, every individual, around what does asking for money mean. I think from a cultural responsiveness perspective, something that's helped me is kind of flipping that narrative on its head and thinking of it less as I'm asking for somebody for money, and more about I'm giving somebody an opportunity who cares about this cause and cares about the work that I'm doing. I'm giving them an opportunity to get involved in a cause that they already care about. And actually, by sending that email or making that fundraising ask, maybe somebody who feels overwhelmed by this topic, who's seeing the news and doesn't know how they can get involved and how they can make an impact, We're giving them that choice and that moment to get involved, make an impact, and we're making it really easy for them to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, it's important to think about your own audience and the folks that not only are you serving, but the folks in your community at large. And if there are ways that really make sense for your messaging and your campaigns to sort of align with important times of the years for those communities, right? So like if you are an organization that's working particularly with the Latino community, like during Latino Hispanic Heritage Month, like how are you aligning those things to your individual giving programs in particular? And of course, we're talking about end of year here, but I think even within end of year too, are there other opportunities when it comes to messaging, language, the ways in which you're thinking about your audience and how you can overlay that into what in a lot of ways is a formula that a lot of organizations use. And so sort of going into that, we're really talking about the ways in which nonprofit organizations can utilize and leverage, for example, technologies or donor database to maximize the end of year giving. Can you share a little bit more about what are some of the simple ways that organizations, particularly ones that may not have a lot of development staff, they can really simplify the ways in which they can utilize their donor databases or their technologies to maximize the end of year giving? And then also a lot of this goes into segmentation. And so how can segmentation help nonprofits meet the end of year goals? So sort of a double question there, but love they're connected in some ways. I'd love for you all to share more a little bit about that. And maybe Shada, we can start with you and then go on to Gurinder and then Amy.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for that. I feel like that really kicks us into high gear. So that's what I'm here for. We know that a vast majority, I've heard anywhere from 60 to 80% of individual gifts come during the time between Giving Tuesday and the end of year, with a large portion of those dollars coming within the last 3 days of the year. So when we're talking about end of year, the reason there's such an emphasis is because at the end of the day, there's money on the table, and it's about our organizations really capitalizing on this amazing moment of our country basically reflecting and choosing to make contributions to organizations that are doing this work year round, organizations like the fantastic groups that you all are a part of. I am like a broken record when it comes to talking about email. We've seen consistently within our data at ActBlue that email fundraising is the most effective way for organizations to raise money online. On average, a person spends like 12 seconds on looking at an email, which doesn't seem like a lot of time. But when we compare that to on social media, I'm clicking, I have less than a second to tell a donor what I'm doing, tell them how making a donation is going to make an impact, and then giving them that opportunity to click that donate button. So I always advocate for sending a fundraising email and sending several, right? It's fairly simple. It's fairly inexpensive to create an online and an email fundraising program. So, right, we need a CRM to hold our donor data. We need a fundraising platform. We know there's free ones like ActBlue, and we need a mass mailer or something like MailChimp. And then at the end of the day, we sit down at our coffee table. I'm happy to run through like the breakdown of a fundraising email with you one-on-one. But cranking out a fundraising email within an hour or so and pushing that out, I think during this time is a really great way to take advantage of the spirit that we have towards the end of the year.
Yeah, just digging deeper into what Shada talked about, segmentation is really important, even when you are looking at what messages resonate with which donors. Like at the end of the year, different donors, depending upon when they have given to the organization, if they have given in the past, have indicated a specific interest towards one component of the work that you're doing, whether in the case of Immigrant Welcome Center, whether it's related to our adult literacy work or whether it's related to our citizenship or legal work, just some examples, how are we making sure that they are getting the message that most resonates with them? Because at the end of the day, a donor wants to give when they see that issues that are important to them are being addressed and that their dollars are going towards addressing those issues. And I know that Ali has more to add to that, so I'm going to pass it to Ali.
I think it was Amy.
To me.
Sorry, Amy.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I was like, wait, what? Yeah, so I definitely think like the way that we do it at Corners is we do have segmentation according to interest because we do a whole family nonprofit. We have people who are really interested in early learning. We have people that are really interested in workforce development. So we do that kind of segmentation, but we also just look at what type of person is this? Maybe it's a business guy who's in his 60s or 70s. The gift that they give is probably a one-time donation versus a younger person who maybe wants to do a monthly kind of ongoing donation. So we really look at it that way too. What is their potential and what might appeal to them? I think because of the way the world runs now, younger people are so used to the monthly kind of thing where they just sign up and they keep going. So does your organization offer that? That might be something that's really helpful to add. And then there are other people who are just like, I don't want to do the online thing, Amy. Like, can I just write you a check? And I'm like, sure, right? So being able to segment donors or understand donors in that way to have those different avenues and aspects, as well as like what we're saying about that, I have an interest in music. I have an interest in workforce. This is something I'm passionate about. To be able to give in that way is important as well.
Great. Yeah, I mean, I think you all have some really great thoughts and lots of things to think about for folks. I just want to encourage folks again, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A portion of the webinar here. I guess now that you've sort of shared a little bit more about this, I just want to go back maybe for some folks who haven't ever started an end of year giving campaign or are new to thinking about individual giving. When you think about segmentation and knowing what a donor interest is, can we step back a little bit and say, like, where does one find out this information? And I, of course, given our work at Welcoming America and the work that I do, I'm familiar with that. But I just want to make sure that we're also, really being able for folks who are new to this to think about, where do you find this information? Is this through things like MailChimp and being able to understand sort of the tools and the technology? Just if you want to give a little bit more about how you're finding out information. Are you doing surveys? Are you doing this through the back end of your technology systems? I'd love to just learn a little bit more about that. And maybe you can share it. And then
since our nonprofit is local, I think it's probably a little bit of a different approach. So I'm looking forward to hearing from everybody. But I would say we really use our team. So my team, it's like, oh, I know this person came to the music concert. They're really invested or interested in this. And so I really survey my team. And I think if you're starting out, that is the way to go. Like if you've had an event and the reason people went to your event was because they knew somebody on your staff, talking to your staff. What are those people interested? What lights them up? What conversations can you have? And then anything from a spreadsheet to a more sophisticated database can help you collect those things. I mean, I think that's one aspect, whether you can have a development director or not. Who do you have that kind of organizes and just puts these notes somewhere so that when you're going the next year and this person's still involved, do you have that information of like the way they got involved is because they loved like what we were doing with the elementary kids or whatever it is?
Yeah, I can go next. And I was reading the question in the chat also. Before I joined the Immigrant Welcome Center, there wasn't any staff person who was dedicated to fundraising except the CEO, and the board was doing quite a bit of that work also. So even if you don't have a database or any other tools, you have your board members. Use your board members, use their connections. They know people who can give, help them with kind of talking about what their networks are and who from their network would like to hear from them. Would they like to talk about why they serve on this nonprofit on their social media? That's one way of increasing awareness about it. Why they give to this from a service perspective or from a donation perspective. Why do they give to this nonprofit? I think another strategy is very simple, is that when you're hosting those events, or activities, when you're going to those tabling events in the community, have just a clipboard with a sign-up sheet. Those people who are taking the time to put their contact information on there want to, be in some way engaged with your nonprofit. Download those to an Excel spreadsheet if you don't have anything, and follow up with them. Even a handwritten note or a postcard to say, thank you for stopping by at our table, just creates that, okay, you didn't just put your name somewhere and it's not just sitting in this dark space. There is a person who is trying to connect with you. Is that creating that personal connection? And I'm sure there are other ideas that my colleagues have.
I love that so much. You probably saw me like snapping, reacting to that, because that's all we talk about all day is how to build our donor base and getting people's emails. Basically, like anytime when I'm running the nonprofits I do in my free time, like anytime I go to an event, I'm asking people, do you want to hear more about my organization? Can I get your email? And then I just add them to my email list. And it's like, then they get part of that flow. And that's just a great, really grassroots way to build that list. And like Harinder was mentioning at events, every time someone enters your door, basically making sure folks are signing in, and then just building from there, as well as through social media is another great way to get folks emails, having them to write, sign petitions. So if there's a local event going on, creating a petition isn't something a lot of organizations I work with will do, just to get more contact information from people who are interested in that cause. In terms of segmentation, and I'll make this brief, Daniel, because I know we don't want to all talk about everything for a long time because there's a lot we're getting through. The big segmentation things that I like to think about when I think about small dollar fundraising is the types of asks that we're asking from folks. So I love the rule of thumb of asking a donor for double their largest previous donation amount. So if somebody's given $50 for end of year, I might ask them, hi, can you pitch in $100 so we can round up this year and start 2024 with a bang? As well as taking a look at people who maybe donated a couple of times and potentially thinking about making a recurring ask of those donors. We have something called, and I think someone mentioned earlier, monthly donors as a really great sustainable way to fund our movements, and utilizing end of year potentially to make recurring fundraising asks. So instead of saying, hey, can you give $15 today, asking, hey, can you give $5 a month going into the new year so that we can fund this work? And I can segment my list and say, I know these 50 people have given 3 times before. This might be a great pool to segment out and make that recurring pitch.
Yeah, for sure. And Fernando, I saw that question there around a young nonprofit and how to get started with the lack of resources, donor database tools. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just really important if you are out in the community doing events, how are you connecting with folks, gathering that information? We have, it's probably not as ideal, but things like, spreadsheets and Google platforms, those kinds of things, so at least have that information. And as you think about also your fundraising strategy in general, if you're out there looking for grants, there's an awareness from a lot of funders now that in order for their investment to go further, putting some of that money towards creating systems and process internally to make your organization stronger. And I think being able to make the case to say like, hey, we want to put X percentage of this grant that will go to our technology infrastructure, and then you can start looking at tools that are available online. So many are out there, and some are more expensive than others depending on what you need. And as an organization, you may start off with a system that's maybe doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but it's going to get you started. And then as you grow and get more resources, you can think about getting systems that are much more sophisticated, that have other kinds of tools that can help you. But I think when you're thinking about starting is how do you, at the very least, get people that your organization is coming in contact with, getting those contact information in some kind of form, whether it's taking that clipboard and that spreadsheet with you, writing them down, and coming back to your office later and putting them into a spreadsheet, so you can reach out to them. And of course, there's other tools here that we'll talk more about as well. But yeah, please continue to send us some more questions. My next question is around, we talked a little bit about this idea of leveraging technology, of making sure that you are, every time you're doing something and coming in contact with folks, that you get their contact information. So this outreach efforts, particularly around end of year, can vary from things like direct mails to emails to social media. And so it can be hard sometimes to figure out which method or methods combination thereof is best. So what's been successful for you, and what would you say to someone, particularly those that are starting this work? Like what are some of the tips or suggestions that you would have for them? Because we know it's different for every organization, but I think giving folks some tips of what you've learned throughout your years would be great. And who wants to kick us off with that?
I can jump in. So we haven't done a lot direct mailers, but we do thank you cards. So I'm glad that Garinda brought that up. That is something we will do, is handwritten thank you cards. We actually have a board member who we have a spreadsheet. We put it in there. We put the address. We say kind of what we're thanking them for, and she actually mails them out. So that might be a system that you guys could adopt, but it's been really helpful for us to have more regular thank you cards going out. As far as our year end, we do a lot of emails. I'm with Shada, like the emails are amazing. And we often reference our social media posts. So we don't think that our social media posts can actually carry the end of year giving. But we do have a lot of people who are like, oh my gosh, I saw that kid. Oh my gosh, I saw this video. I saw this story. Those kind of things can be helpful. So one thing that's a benefit with our team has grown is we do more videos. And I would say doing quick videos, even on your phone, and putting that into an email can be a nice way to actually give people an image of what it looks like at your community, what your recent event was like, even if they couldn't be there. And then really one-on-one conversations. I rely a lot on my staff and board to have one-on-one conversations, to catch up with people at year end, especially some of those big donors, and have the conversation. How are you doing? We're doing these things. Do you want to offer a year-end gift?
Yeah, I know that email, we've talked a lot about social media and emails. I think that the value of direct mail is still relevant, depending upon, and again, you should know who your donors are. If your donors are not from the past 2 generational cohorts that we say, then they are definitely interested in opening that piece of mail that comes to them in their mailbox, and touching that piece of paper and reading about what your organization has done. So, and I'm going to add one more thing to that. In direct mail, just don't randomly send the same message to everybody. There is segmentation that can be done in direct mail as well. For example, as I was getting ready for this session, I was just speaking with our development manager and director, and I was, talking with her about who should receive a direct mail that is hand signed by me. So it's not just my electronic signature; it's my hand signed signature, or where I am saying, Happy Kwanzaa to you because they celebrate Kwanzaa that I know of, or if there is another holiday of significance that they're celebrating, that we're including that, so that we're personalizing it to the extent that we can.
I think my answer to this question is like confusing because every organization is different. Every capacity is different in terms of your organization. So I'll just take a step back. I'm trying to figure out. I really like the point of, right, if you can do direct mail, that's amazing. Our research shows that thank you letters, holiday cards actually end up bringing in more money, even if you're not asking for money with those types of like direct personal things. Donors love to feel appreciated, not only emotionally, but also it does have a financial impact to thank our donors, which I think is kind of crazy and very cool. If we're thinking like a more low lift option, Giving Tuesday is Tuesday, November 28th. Making sure we're sending out at least one, if not multiple, emails on that day and or leading up to it. We know it's a really oversaturated time, so people are not going to be necessarily clicking on every single email they're receiving. So sending more, I always opt for. And I've even heard of people, like, if you see people aren't reading your email, sending that same email to them again. Like, I've heard of that working for organizations as well. Just making sure we're trying to get in front of them during this time, because we know folks are giving, we know it's an oversaturated time, and we know sending an email is a really inexpensive, easy lift that anybody can do, regardless of your size of the organization you're in, regardless of how big your email list is, and regardless of how long or how many times you've done an end of year program before. I heard a really great tip of, during those last 3 days of the year, just having like your schedule send 3 emails, one for each of those last 3 days of the year, because we know so much money comes in during those last 3 days for tax reasons, religious reasons, whatever it may be. So having a scheduled email just for those 3 days before you go on vacation, I've seen it's very effective. If you have a texting option, so like doing a multi-pronged approach, so text, social media, email, in person, and like direct mail, obviously that's ideal, but starting with just an email on Giving Tuesday and an email for end of year, I think can be really, really fantastic.
Yes, great stuff. I mean, I think you all covered all the things that I would say. I think you mentioned text, I think too. I think a lot of times probably text is an underutilized way to communicate with folks in particular. And of course, again, it's all about knowing your audience. Some folks may be annoyed by getting a text, and would rather have an email that they can open up whenever they're ready to check their email. So I think what we're seeing is we're building on making sure that you have information about the folks that you're coming in contact with. So some type of way of getting their contact information and understanding where they're coming to you from, or what's interested them in being in contact with you as an organization. From there, being able to then send out that ask through a number of different channels. And if you're getting started in this, you may have to try something one year, see how it works. Maybe there's different times throughout the year too, so you can try different strategies for different campaigns. Maybe you want to do 2 campaigns in a given year, end of year plus something else, and you can try different methods and see sort of what results you get from that. And a lot of this is iterating as you go through this process as well. But what I've seen as being sort of something that is that we're seeing sort of across all of the answers and sort of the feedback that we're getting from the panelists is that the content really matters. What you're saying to folks is, at the end of the day, is really going to really motivate someone to give. So can you all give us some examples of compelling campaign messaging that you have developed or you have seen? Love to hear more about that. Amy, we'll start with you.
Oh my goodness. At my nonprofit, I'm not afraid to be cheesy. So a lot of times we do something kind of cheesy. We did a big campaign end of year that was a little bit like Mr. Rogers. So like with the little, like it was like these little emails, and we had a person on staff who was happy to do this, but putting on the sweater, taking off the shoes, like, let's talk about what really matters. So I do find that sometimes those cheesy little things, and my team's really good about it, like I'll script them out and then they're like, actually it kind of works. Can be just a fun way to do fundraising and to get people to look at something that, we all get the emails, we all get the things, but when you see somebody that maybe dressed up or doing something not totally hokey, but a little bit of a theme. We've done different holiday themes. We've done, trying to think of what we've done. We've done like like tiered kind of like images. So it's like, this is, we have a little like a little platform, and we have different levels here, things like that. I'm a very visual person. So a lot of times our end of year campaigns have a visual component, whether it's an image or a video that people can kind of look at, and we can use social, emails, and when we're talking to those donors.
Sorry, I'll go next, and I am the exact opposite of Amy. I'm not cheesy, but just trying to find that hook that's important. That hook can be cheesy. It doesn't have to be. Using pictures, as Amy said, is really important, because when you can see a picture, it's not just those words that are written, and trying to find those stories that are the most meaningful, that are aligned with your mission. So, when our mission and vision says that we want to be a trusted partner to ensure that all immigrants can thrive, one way we know that the pathway to citizenship is going to result in an individual being able to, not have some of the angst that you may have when you're not sure about your status. Being able to learn English and as an adult, and being able to use that in your job. Simple quotes that we get from clients, such as, I couldn't sign into the work platform, and now I can by myself because I've learned the English. I know what the keys of the computer say. Those kind of stories are really, how can anyone not be moved by those stories? So finding those simple snippets of information to share and making them more meaningful with pictures is what we like to do.
I love it. And I'm so appreciative of my colleagues, Amy and Gurinder right now. I feel like you both just illustrated such a beautiful thing, which is that all of our organizations are so different. All of our audiences are so different. And so at the end of the day, and I wrote this in bold before you all even started talking, testing. And I think end of year is so difficult because we're all in like vacation mode right afterwards, right? We're all going to be with our families, but taking the time as soon as you get back from that vacation to write a quick reflection or something just in a Google Drive somewhere, end of year 2023, here's what worked, here's what didn't. This is the messaging that our donors responded to, and this was the response. Just so that in 8 months, when you're gonna do this exact same thing again, you at least have something to look on from the year before, and you'll be thanking yourself that I put in this extra 10 minutes so I can have an idea and continue to, as we continue to get to know our donors and as we continue to do this work, we can really hone in on what messaging is most effective. With that, I'll just share like some of my favorite things. I love like the end of year accomplishments list. Like I love all my organizations, so I love looking at what everybody's done. I always like clicking on those emails. So anything that gets someone to click, any subject line that gets somebody to click, I think is the most important thing that's going to be part of your fundraising ask, is going to get somebody to click. And on that note, one of the most effective strategies that we see here at Act Blue is utilizing current events and things that are going on right now, whether it's in your local community, national news. Obviously, in the immigrant rights space, this unfortunately is pretty easy to do in a lot of places and situations. And so using that type of hook can be beneficial to get folks to click on that email, see what work you all are doing in response to that, and then making that hard donation ask.
Great, thanks. I think you all have some, you demonstrate sort of the diversity that exists within sort of the different strategies, and I think testing and iterating as you develop this campaigns and your strategy is going to be key. One thing that I'll add to, and it's always a fine line here, and it's really something that I think in general organizations should be thinking about is, when you're thinking about messaging and narratives and what you're trying to put out there, particularly if you're a direct service organization, making sure that your narratives and your messaging really aren't contributing to a further like sort of charity model for communities, or making them seem like these are communities that you're serving that don't have any voice, that don't have any power. And so how are you making sure that you're uplifting, these stories, like uplifting the power of the community that you're not only serving, but working alongside with, and who are also, contributing to the community in very meaningful and positive ways. And that in so many ways also are folks that are your donors that are contributing to your work. So I think really thinking about when you're creating and crafting these messaging, am I furthering this narrative about the community that I'm serving? That's a negative narrative, or am I trying to disband that and to uplift a more positive narrative? And I think that's important to think about as you're developing these messages and these narratives. I'd love for folks to ask more questions. I have a list of questions. I'm just thinking that maybe I am hitting on all the questions that folks have, but if you have any questions that you'd like for us to answer, we do have some time, so we'll be stopping by anytime that there's a question. And actually, I think there was a question that came in here. I recently traveled to Poland as a part of a documentary. We are producing much of our conversations with the cities and nonprofits in Poland, and the Ukrainian crisis was about compassion fatigue. How do you address this issue in your organizations, as donors are targeted by many, many organizations, and the media abundance of reporting on global challenges has continued to lead to compassion fatigue? That's really it's a great question. I think it speaks to the sort of this narrative right around how do you uplift those voices. And I don't know if anyone on the team here wants to take this question on. I'm sure you're seeing this in general in communities, and I'm sure it's not just from a development perspective. It's probably coming from a number of different angles. So just curious to hear how are you all thinking about compassion fatigue, especially given everything that's in the news so much. Who wants to kick us off?
I unmuted myself, so I'll go first. My background is also in public health and in data, so I think that absolutely we do get tired of listening to the same issues that are impacting community members. But if you can bring data that shows the impact of how it is uplifting them, as you have said, or making a difference in their life that's a positive instead of a negative, I think that is always appreciated by individuals. But also, showing them, I said this earlier too, what they can do to make a difference. I think that connects them to the issue much more than anything else. What are you doing? So majority of our emails will start, or even the direct mail will start with thanking the donor first. You made this possible, and then going into the other details, because it's not just about us, right? It is about them. Something about what the work that we do is connecting to their thinking concrete side as well as their heart side. So making sure that we're making those connections.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like thanking people, starting with gratitude, is really important. We use some levity. I mean, some of the cheesiness that we use is partly because then we're going to get to the heavy heart moment, but we know like life can be hard and there's a lot of worthy causes out there. So we as a team, when we're talking about fundraising, we don't talk about, this is the most worthy cause and this is where, it's like, no, like we are part of a team that's really trying to move things forward in a positive way. And we're partnering with other great, amazing organizations and partnering with families and trying to be part of something together. And so we talk about sometimes the investment, and we use different language to let people feel like they're joining us. We're not asking them to just give to another something. It's like, no, we want you to be involved. We want to have a community approach. So some of that language sometimes helps, but I do think it's hard. I think there's a lot of heaviness and a lot of weight. And so sometimes it can be just, a board member having a phone call versus just sending an email, or trying to do that personal touch in whatever way it can come across, to say, like, we do care about you. We know there's a lot going on. What are you interested in? How might you be involved with us this year?
Sorry, I'm writing this down because you all are making me think about so many things. And I mean, I didn't really touch on this very much in my introduction, but working with racial justice and immigrant rights organizations over the last 2 years has been incredibly challenging, right? Where we saw the racial uprisings that happened. We saw what's been happening over the last year in the immigrants' rights space. And a lot of us are tired, and a lot of us are exhausted, and a lot of us are fed up. I think at the same time, everyone responds to trauma and what's going on around them very differently, right? Some people are like, take this away from me. I don't want to see anything. I'm not going to look at my email. I'm definitely one of those people. I don't want to hear about it. Other people respond by, I actually want to get involved. I want to go out and volunteer. I want to get in the mud right now immediately because I feel restless and I feel like I need something to do. And that's when we don't make those decisions for other people and we stick to our fundraising plans. So writing a fundraising plan for end of year in October and sticking to it no matter what happens in the rest of the year, obviously with some caveats and some understanding that we can adapt and shift based around what our organization sees fit for our communities. But I think a lot of times as organizers, we project our own reactions onto how we think everybody else is. And I think sometimes folks do want an opportunity to get engaged, and making a contribution can be one of those ways. The other piece, this is what I was writing down so I wouldn't forget, is that we all know as organizers in the space that this work doesn't stop, right? If XYZ politician comes and does XYZ crazy thing, the work is only going to accelerate, right? We don't have time always as organizers, and we can have a million discussions about this, to take those breaks and say, okay, well, we're not gonna keep doing this work because we don't have any other choice. And so I view digital organizing the same way of, you all are doing this fantastic work on the ground. You all are changing our lives and creating this transformational change in a society that we need to see. Other people recognize that, and other people want to be a part of it. Asking them for money is just a way to allow us to continue doing this work. So I guess I'm just taking this as an opportunity to thank all of you all for this amazing work that you're all doing. It's just an honor, and it doesn't stop.
Yes, lots of ways that we can spend, a lot of time sort of talking about each of these different pieces that we've sort of skimmed the surface on. And I hope that this has started to give folks some ideas, some thoughts about how to strengthen your end of year campaign if you already do one, if you're starting one, to give you some ways to start thinking about this work. We have Welcoming America has an array of expertise and resources through our network. So if your organization isn't part of the network, we encourage you to think about joining. We'll be providing some slides with some information at the end. But I guess before I want to be very mindful of people's time, and we want to make sure that we're ending here on time. And so my last question here for the group is, knowing that we've had this conversation, what are the key takeaways that you want folks to hear about as it relates to end of year giving and end of year campaigns? Shade, I'll start with you, and then we'll move our way over.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And again, thank you to my colleagues, my fellow panelists, and Welcoming America, and all of you for showing up today. For me, and for representing Act Blue and like a nonprofit technology platform, what I want folks to walk away from this is that you are not alone. We are here at Act Blue as a nonprofit organization dedicated to, and my job is specifically to support racial justice and immigrant rights organizations in building and expanding their online fundraising programs. So We are a completely free platform. All of my strategy support that I give one-on-one with the organizations that I work with is completely free. And it's because we're a mission-driven organization working with organizations like Welcoming America to see how can we support the work that you all are doing, and through fundraising specifically, how can we make sure that our movements are sustainable over time. So if you don't mind, Daniel, do you mind if I just drop my email into the chat so folks want to reach out?
Yeah, we'll follow up with some emails too, but yeah, feel free to drop it in there. And then also we'll do a follow-up email to all the folks that registered to this, sending them the webinar and any other resources that we're able to send out to folks.
Okay, fantastic. So I'll just drop my email, my Calendly, everything in the chat. If anything was interesting or you want to just get on a strategy call to vent, I'm here for you all, and I'm excited to continue to work with you all together.
Thank you. Brenda?
I think that we have talked a lot about what has worked for us, but digging into not just at the end of the year, but throughout the year, giving gratitude to yourself for the work that you do, making a difference in the lives of the cause of the clients that you're working with is just as important as raising money. And I'm just going to leave it at that because I know that, end of the year and other campaigns, they're not easy.
Thank you. Amy?
I would just say my final piece of advice or encouragement is that you can do it. I think everyone hates fundraising. Everyone doesn't like asking for money. It's not that fun. It's not that easy, but you can do it. And I feel like, somebody told me when I was really getting into this work, like people give to people. And so that's important to remember. Like if you could just be yourself and be present, that's a big part of it. I just encourage you guys to know that you can do it. You have the skills. This kind of networking is super helpful, getting ideas. Like I've learned a lot myself on this call. So being part of conversations like this to just, to really get after it. So best of luck to all of you guys who are doing fundraising. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you to our panelists. Huge round of applause. And Anthony, if we can share the last slides for folks that we have in terms of follow-up. You want to stay connected, you can scan this QR code to receive our monthly newsletter if you're not already signed up. And there's ways to reach out to folks at Welcoming America. Please continue to do so. We're really excited. A huge thanks to Anthony and Ali on our team for helping organize this, for all the back end support around this. Really appreciate it. And a huge thanks to all of you for coming in. Like I said, I always want to be mindful of people's time. So we will be sending this out as a part of our follow-up, and we'll share any other resources that any of our panelists want to share with us to include in there. Ali, I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add, but if not, we can close the webinar today. And again, thanks everyone for joining us. Really appreciate it.